The arrival of the Nintendo Switch 2 means a lot of things, but most notably among them is that we are once again in uncharted territory. As the Switch headed towards the latter years of its life, while great games were a constant, speculation inevitably started to dry up. That's just the nature of reaching the end of a system's lifespan. Priorities begin to shift, and while there's still plenty of fun to be had and predictions to be made, they always came with a general understanding that we were holding back. Because games were being held back. I mean, what, is Nintendo just gonna throw their next 3D Mario or Smash Bros or Animal Crossing onto decade-old hardware? Of course not, save it for the next system. Years of restrictions applied to our speculation with the knowledge that it would finally pay off when that highly anticipated next gen rolled around. And we made it. The Switch 2 is upon us, and with it, the shackles have been released. Once again, anything is possible, and all those legendary reveals and releases from the Switch era, they're gonna be coming back around. Everything is on the table. The only question is when. And that's what we're covering here. Nintendo's often commended for how mysteriously they present themselves. Their ability to surprise is second to none in the industry. But that doesn't mean they're completely unpredictable. Just like any other developer, they've got no shortage of patterns to analyze, rumors to unravel, and history to unpack to make some educated assessments of when certain games will be arriving. And by certain games, I mean all the games. Today, we're not just predicting, but researching, investigating, assembling every piece of pertinent information from developer interviews to past release timings to figure out when every Nintendo franchise is coming to Switch 2. Well, I mean, most of them. This video is already going to be super long, and we've got dozens of IPs to go over, so forgive me for not covering Starfy. It's not personal. Here's how things are going to work. Each franchise that we go over will be accompanied by one of 6 rankings after the info is analyzed. Year 1, Year 2, Year 3, Year 4, second half of the generation, or never. Call it imprecise if you want, but I don't think there's any real tangible difference between me saying Golden Sun is coming into Switch 2's 7th or 8th year. Also, I'm defining these by calendar year because going June to June based on the system's launch timing seems unnecessarily confusing. In addition to this, each of these rankings will be followed by a certainty level on my part, 5 meaning I bet money on it, and 1 meaning it's a virtual shot in the dark. As much as I'd like to pretend we're approaching all of these with the same amount of information, obviously there's going to be more to go off of with a consistent franchise than a dormant one. And finally, we'll only be counting new releases here. A Switch 2 edition that launches on the same day as its Switch 1 version is fair game, but a repackaged 8-year-old title, invalid. Otherwise, half of this turns into a which Switch games are getting ported video. With all that said, let's get started. We'll be going through alphabetically, and I think I know what'll be up first. What? We have to include numbers? Oh no, no, no! With 2 mainline entries in the generation directly preceding this one, 1-2 Switch is unfortunately relevant enough to be acknowledged. This launch day tech demo served me very little outside of ball count, which was admittedly kinda cool and I was admittedly very good at. Outside of that, I really don't have much to say about it. And that goes double for everybody 1-2 Switch, which I only own because of a sick and twisted Secret Santa. But this entry wasn't just controversial at my Christmas party. Prior to its reveal, we heard rumors about a 1-2 Switch sequel that Nintendo had been sitting on for a long time. Fanbyte reported that the game had apparently tested so poorly that it was sitting idle, with certain Nintendo employees fearing it could damage the company's reputation. The game went on to sell poorly, not even cracking 1 million, and seemingly confirming that being a launch title did all the heavy lifting for its predecessor. Apparently it had a random resurgence in Australia. I don't know what's going on down there. With all the internal controversy it caused, I think 1-2 Switch is dead in the water. Never happening. Okay, now we get to talk about I haven't played Advance Wars, everything I know about it is from Voyin. Advance Wars as a franchise is a victim of circumstance, and those circumstances tend to be bad. In spite of that, it kept on fighting, finally returning in 2023 after a 15-year hiatus. Way Forward, primarily known for Bakugan Champions of Vestroia, were the ones to revive the series with 1+2 Reboot Camp, a remake of the first 2 GBA entries. And the monkey's paw curled. Citing real-world events, Nintendo made the reasonable decision to delay their war-centered game to a later date, which didn't seem like a major deal. I mean, second delay, but surely they'd aim for a point in their schedule where it wouldn't be overshadowed. Reboot Camp got buried, releasing to little fanfare and an undefined sub-million sales number. It didn't even drop in Japan. And while the series never sold incredibly, it being sent out in the way it was makes it hard to believe Nintendo would invest in a new entry anytime soon. Sorry, Advance Wars, you get a slightly less certain never than 1-2 Switch. Yes. Finally, some positivity. Not to spoil the segment or anything, but there are few things in this world that I believe in as much as I believe in Animal Crossing 2026. The historic success of Animal Crossing New Horizons cannot be overstated. Second best-selling Switch game and 17th best-selling game ever are the kind of achievements Nintendo can't ignore. Especially when we see where the only Switch game that performed better ended up. This franchise is in the hands of EPD5, the Nintendo division that also develops Splatoon. This has sparked a lot of debates surrounding these two series, what's being developed currently, and what will be released first. And the answer, which is relevant to this entire video, is that EPD doesn't work like you think it does. Nintendo's entertainment planning and development groups are not the same as development teams. While there are obviously groups that have singular focuses, like EPD3, who works on 3D Zelda, most of the groups that develop multiple franchises, EPD5 especially, form multiple teams from their available resources. This doesn't mean that the overlap you imagine is non-existent, but it can also vary greatly, and evidently isn't the same as sharing an entire development team. So when I say I'll be mad if Splatoon drops first, no, that's not indicative of anything meaningful. It's the principle of it. Animal Crossing New Horizons is 5 years old. The time span between it and the next entry has already eclipsed all other gaps in the franchise aside from New Leaf to New Horizons, where, if you hadn't noticed, Nintendo was kinda dying for a second. And while we can expect development times to grow longer in accordance with stronger hardware, something that's also relevant for the rest of the video, Animal Crossing isn't an insanely ambitious franchise either. 6 years between entries seems more than reasonable, 1 year off from the 7 years that was seen as comically drawn out. And even before it became as big as it is, Animal Crossing was always a priority announcement. Wild World was revealed at the same time as the DS. City Folk was confirmed to be in development before we even knew what a Wii was. And New Leaf, once again, made its debut at the system unveiling. All of these went on to release within the first 2 years of their respective consoles' lives. New Horizons was an exception to the rule, and heck, even that was supposed to drop in 2019 before it got delayed. Nintendo's pushing Game Chat as the Switch 2's defining new feature, and what better franchise to sell that with than the one that literally became its own form of communication when the world fell apart. Animal Crossing is inevitable, and if you don't believe me, come back after the June Direct. Or September, it's coming either way. Year 2. While this video is mostly restricted to franchises that have more than one entry, hence Ice Climber not making the cut, I'm making an exception for ARMS as it feels relevant to the conversation. ARMS was a 2017 release that performed decently well. 2.7 million is not a failed IP just because it didn't become the next Splatoon. And in the time since, Nintendo's still shown plenty of love to the game, with Min Min's inclusion in Smash and a confirmed launch day Switch 2 patch. Speculation surrounding a sequel has been consistent in smaller circles, but was overshadowed by one major roadblock. ARMS was created by EPD9, the Mario Kart division, and unlike EPD5, this was done near entirely by the Mario Kart 8 team. Naturally, the next Mario Kart game was the primary fan obsession. We now, like right now as I'm making this, know that Mario Kart World started development in March 2017, before ARMS was even out. But now that we're getting it, could EPD9 finally go back to ARMS? I don't see why not. When asked about a sequel back in 2018, producer Kosuke Yabuki, who is also producing Mario Kart World, said that the team would prefer to talk about it when it's the right time to surprise everyone. And while I'm sure World would get plenty of DLC, I doubt that's a full production group's effort. ARMS came out 3 years after Mario Kart 8, and that game created the concept. I feel like an iterative next-gen sequel could be done in the same amount of time. ARMS is a Year 4 franchise, but early Year 4. Look, there's no denying that Chibi-Robo's been dealt a bad hand these past few years, but I'm always one to look on the bright side. Sure, original developer Skip Limited is now defunct, but that's not their only developer, is it? Ziplash, for all that can be said about it, was co-developed by Vanpool, who is also defunct. Well, committed devs can rescue a franchise from the brink of death if they're passionate enough about its future. It's not like they would just give a... Never in my wildest dreams would I have predicted in the early planning stages of this video that Donkey Kong of all franchises would be our first segment with a confirmed release. But Bonanza is making my dreams come true, both in reviving the series and saving me time after I spent way too long talking about Animal Crossing. It's a habit. There is a conversation to be had about DK's 2D future, but just let me have this. After returning with a set of remakes in 2021, Famicom Detective Club earned itself a new entry with Emio, the Smiling Man. Neither of these games seem to sell incredibly well, but unlike some of the previous weak sellers we discussed, that doesn't really seem to be a factor for this franchise. FTC is a visual novel series, a comparatively inexpensive genre, and both the remakes and Emio were born out of pure passion. While original director and Nintendo veteran Yoshio Sakamoto gets most of the credit, it was actually Mages, the series' newest developer, that sought to make these projects happen. In Emio's Ask the Developer interviews, Sakamoto recalls how it was Mages that pitched the remakes to Nintendo and kicked off the entire development process, which wound up leading to a new entry. While Sakamoto is a busy man and likely has his hands in another franchise currently, the dedication that he, co-producer Kaori Miyachi, and Mages has for the series makes me doubt it'll be going away anytime soon. 3 years between entries has now been established, and I wouldn't be shocked if they stuck to it. Year 3. Fire Emblem's an interesting one to discuss. In spite of the rampant rumors from the likes of Nate the Hate of a Fire Emblem 4 remake that have circulated for years now, the game's remained mysteriously absent to this point. The existence of this remake was leaked at the same time as Fire Emblem Engage, lending some pretty undeniable credibility to the rumor. And seeing as that game was seemingly sat on for over a year, Genealogy could be in a similar position, meaning it could show up at basically any time, assuming it wasn't cancelled. All the leaks we've gotten have pointed to a Switch release, but if Prime 4 and Legends ZA are anything to go by, Switch 2 editions for big new releases seem like a shoo-in. In fact, maybe prettying it up for cross-gen has led to a longer wait. It feels silly to keep predicting this one is right around the corner, but I know that the minute I don't, it'll finally show up, so I'm keeping at it. It's no exclusive, but I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo used it to beef up their fall lineup this year. FZero, a franchise that was considered comically dead for a very long time, has finally moved up in the world, earning the title of debatably dead. While it wasn't what every fan was looking for, F-Zero 99 is obviously a major victory for the series, and feels like the exact sort of careful dip Nintendo's done for plenty of other franchises before taking the plunge. And with both Mario Kart and Kirby Air Ride, which has incredibly become a factor in this, launching this year, there's a whole generation left for new Nintendo racing goodness. But the main thing I want to highlight here, which relates both to F-Zero and most other dormant franchises, is something that Reggie had to contribute to the topic after his retirement. When asked by VentureBeat why F-Zero was abandoned, he spoke on Nintendo's constant search for unique experiences, echoing the supposed lack of ideas that many had already presumed was the reason for its departure. But he went on to say this: "My bet is that somewhere in the Kyoto development centers, some developer is playing around with an idea that might be applied to F-Zero. It's never a situation, at least in my experience, where the company makes a conscious decision not to continue supporting XYZ franchise. Historically, it just hasn't worked that way. Not when I was there." This is relevant for a couple reasons. One, it gives us some insight into the breadth of experimentation that happens within Nintendo, but two, it puts the idea to rest that Nintendo is actively refusing to engage with certain franchises. There's a plethora of reasons why a series can stop getting entries, be it a lack of compelling ideas, like previously mentioned, or a lack of developers to create them. Donkey Kong and Pikmin were entryless for a decade until they found new homes or helping hands. Something to consider going forward. Anyway, second half, sure. Man, am I overshooting my word limits. Hey, remember that thing I said 2 seconds ago about Nintendo not actively refusing to engage with certain franchises? Okay, surprisingly there's a lot to talk about here. Golden Sun is in an interesting position. This franchise was spearheaded by Camelot, who currently has a nice cozy spot in Mario Sports Jail. Tennis, golf, tennis, horse, tennis, golf isn't a pattern that leaves much room for Isaac to squeeze his way into. However, the studio has been noticeably quiet lately. Mario sports games, at least for the past decade and some change, have generally come out in quick succession, with a 3-year gap between Tennis Aces and Super Rush being noticeably long for the studio. To what end, I couldn't tell you, but we've nearly passed 4 years since that point. Could it be? Probably not. But I wouldn't give up hope completely. We actually have an interesting statement on the subject from former leaker Emily Rogers, an early Switch-era figurehead whose final major act was leaking Fire Emblem Engage. Back in 2021, she said this: "I'll put it this way. Internally, in the last 10 years, Nintendo has shown more interest in Golden Sun than people realize. Nintendo likes Golden Sun. The big thing holding it back is finding the right developer to work on it. Because Camelot has its plate full with Mario Sports, and Mario Sports makes Nintendo a lot of money." This calls back to what Reggie was talking about. Series abandonment is never an active choice, it's all situational. So I truly believe that if Nintendo wants Golden Sun back, whether that's a remake or new entry, they'll find a way to make it happen, just like they did with so many other dormant franchises at the end of the Switch era. If it's not Camelot though, there is no educated guess for me to make. Just a regular guess. Year 4, why not? Don't quote me. Hey, remember that thing I said 2 segments ago about Nintendo not actively refusing to engage with certain... Kid Icarus pains me. There are franchises on this list that haven't seen new entries since the 2000s, and yet somehow it's my Funny Angel series that fills me with the most hopelessness. But, you know, who cares how I feel? Let's look at the facts. Kid Icarus Uprising is a masterpiece that launched in 2012 for the 3DS. It ended with a comedic stinger where the main villain jokes that it'll be 25 years before the next entry. I don't think it's a joke anymore. This game was the vision of Masahiro Sakurai. Briefly free from his Smash Bros. Shackles, he sat down, locked in, created a studio for the heck of it, and made. Uprising only sold a little over 1 million units, and with it being such an ambitious title, and its creator moving on to other things, its vocal fanbase, that's me, was left wondering if a wider audience, that's you, would ever get to experience its greatness. So began the roller coaster. Sakurai decides to create a YouTube video about the difficulty system he created for Kid Icarus Uprising. Aw, that's a nice throwback, I hope he ends it in a normal way.
シンパルテナ強気ゲームとしてやりたいですよね。どこかがペロッと移植してくれないかな。
You can't do that? Unclear the stage right now. What? Suddenly hope, or some semblance of it, exists. 3DS ports on Switch aren't out of the ordinary. Could it happen? Oh, he went on to say that he actually wasn't working on Kid Icarus and misses it to the point of considering a written continuation. But in April 2022, Bandai Namco posted a job listing for a 3D action game remaster contracted by Nintendo, necessitating HD remastering of 3D backgrounds. Namco is the Smash developer. They're more familiar with Sakurai's projects than anyone. Is this the dagger? Oh, Bloomberg reported last year that Bandai axed a Nintendo commissioned project and they're working on Air Riders and Smash. I don't know, man. If, and that's a big if, we assume Nintendo really did try to get Uprising remastered, I guess it shows a level of commitment that could lead to something more. And the Switch 2's mouse mode would be a perfect control scheme to address some of the game's flaws. But as for confidence, you're getting an uncertain second half, buddy. Right out of the gate, Kirby is doing pretty well for himself this era. With a Switch 2 edition of Forgotten Land and a confirmed spin-off in Air Riders, this franchise's presence is already unavoidable. But what we're looking for is the next mainline game, and thankfully, I don't think it's too far off. Kirby games rarely take more than a few years to drop. Almost every game in the modern era, from Return to Dreamland onwards, came out within 2.5 years following its predecessor, with Forgotten Land being the exception at 4. This makes sense. The series was jumping into 3D for the first time, kinda sorta, and naturally would have needed more time in the oven because of it. We're over 3 years past Forgotten Land at this point, and with 2025 sufficiently Kirbified, I think 2026 is a done deal for the next 3D follow-up. Year 2, no question. During the Switch era, Luigi's Mansion went from a franchise that performs well to a franchise that outperforms Splatoon. There's no doubt in my mind that Luigi's Mansion 4 will be a priority title for Nintendo. The only question is how far up the release schedule can that priority carry it. Next Level Games dropped Mario Strikers Battle League in 2022 to a collective meh, and we haven't heard a peep from them since. Considering the release was clearly lower effort for the studio, and Luigi's Mansion director Bryce Holiday wasn't involved in the project at all, beyond an ambiguous additional design credit, it's safe to say that this one's on its way. Next Level has been on a strict 3-year schedule ever since becoming Nintendo exclusive, and it's been 3 years since Battle League. But here's my dilemma. Luigi's Mansion 4 could be this year. If Nintendo's hiding one final fall Switch 2 exclusive, there's no doubt in my mind that it's this. However, I feel like this could also be where growing development times come into play. Luigi's Mansion is an expanding franchise. Each entry is trying to do more than the last, and on top of that, it's gorgeous. From an animation and fidelity standpoint, Next Level is one of Nintendo's best. They put a lot into these games, and with 3 earning as much as it did, I'm betting they'll be allowed to take things even further. I think they need a little more time than usual. Maybe only a few months, but that's enough for me to say year 2 with a reasonable level of certainty. A reveal this year, though, I'd bet on that. I don't know if you've noticed, but Mario kinda has a lot of series under its belt. So much so that it'll slow the video to a crawl if we talk about each one for as long as we've been doing. Here's the plan. I'm gonna talk about 3D Mario, because that's the big one, and then we'll zoom through the rest in a speed section with some sort of alliterated title that I haven't thought of yet. Cool? Cool. You guys are crazy. Look, I want 3D Mario as much as the next guy, probably more than the next guy, depending on the guy, but I just don't think it's coming as soon as some of the rest of you seem to. I've seen people suggest that it's this year's holiday title, and I'm sorry, I can't see it. Our main roadblock here is Donkey Kong Bonanza, a title that we can safely guess was helmed by EPD Tokyo, aka the 3D Mario division. And while I can certainly buy that this game was made in tandem with 3D Mario, I don't think it's a risk Nintendo would take if it meant Mario gets shoved to the back half of the life cycle. I think there's been a major effort to downplay Bonanza solely to maintain the idea that 3D Mario is imminent. We haven't seen much from this game, we're still waiting for that big blowout trailer, but even the little we've gotten makes it clear that this is by no means a lesser effort. Bonanza looks big, it's diverse in environments and movement options, beautifully animated, and most notably, it's entirely destructible. Nothing about this game screams quick breather before our big one in the same way something like Battle League did. It is the big one. Some people clearly wish that wasn't the case, but I'll say this. I can't think of an easier way to kill your multi-medium, years-in-the-making Donkey Kong revival effort than to cut off its premier title's momentum after 4 months. With that said, when do I think 3D Mario's coming? Some people are pushing holiday 2026, and that's definitely more reasonable, especially to tap into that movie cross-promotion like Wonder did. But I'm gonna be bold here. I'm thinking 2027. Could be early, but that's where I'm landing. Year 3. And if I'm wrong, I mean, I still win, dog. That's 3D Mario. Alright, with that out of the way, it's time for Mario Mania. Sure, whatever. Let's go through all these series. 2D Mario's in an interesting place after Wonder. A sequel could technically drop relatively soon after release, but I don't necessarily believe we're getting a Wonder sequel. Its style will definitely inform the next 2D Mario's direction, but a direct follow-up, a straight-up Wonder 2, sort of feels antithetical to the creative renaissance that game was trying to establish. What I think is more likely is that Wonder gets a Switch 2 edition that fills that 2D Mario role, while EPD10 shifts their focus onto other things. Year 4. Speaking of those other things, Mario Maker 3 is an inevitability, and I strongly believe it's coming soon. Not only can it take advantage of the Switch 2's mouse mode, but it can also hop on the Wonder craze and use its style as a selling point while it's still fresh. And while it's not really mainline, it still provides a new 2D Mario experience that's exclusive to Switch 2, especially if it has a single-player campaign like Mario Maker 2 did. This is definitely the next EPD10 production. Year 2. Mario Kart is already confirmed, nothing to talk about there. We'll go over its inevitable DLC some other time. Mario Sports, which includes all sports, I'm not going over each individually. If we assume that Camelot really is trapped here, this seems like another easy year too. For better or worse, Nintendo seems to really be pushing Dragon Drive as their launch year sports game, so I don't see them feeling inclined to overshadow that with Mario. My only hope is that Camelot does something different. Get out of your comfort zone. Sluggers or hoops would be awesome to see back. It's probably just tennis again though. Always tennis. Mario Party is an easy one. This series has been on a 3-year schedule for its main titles ever since Nintendo Cube took over in 2012. That's 5 entries with equal wait time in between them. And unlike Luigi's Mansion, this isn't a franchise that's ambitious enough for me to see that needing to change. Year 3. Paper Mario is kinda similar as far as patterns are concerned. Since 2012, we've gotten one of these games every 4 years. Intelligent Systems seems pretty unwavering in how they schedule them. And while you could make the argument that the next Paper Mario game might arrive early, since Thousand Year Door wasn't a new entry, I feel like IS has enough on their plate for them to allow what was clearly a high-effort remake to fill that slot. Not to mention the fact that the series is poised to be more ambitious than ever. Year 4 is still a safe bet to me. And finally, Mario and Luigi. Reborn. Brothership didn't sell like crazy, which isn't surprising when it bookended a 12-month Mario RPG marathon, but still wound up meeting the series' typical standards, likely earning itself a spot next to Superstar Saga's 2.1 million when everything's said and done. M&L found a new home with Acquire, but I wouldn't be shocked if it took a while for us to get the next entry. These games aren't strangers to taking their time, and I imagine Nintendo will be more careful with how closely they position them going forward. Pains me to say it, but I'm going second half. Alright, Mario's done, on to Metroid. Beyond is scheduled for later this year, so that covers that, but more interesting is 2D Metroid. Mercury's Steam dropped Dread back in 2021, and it went on to become the best-selling game in the franchise. There's no doubt in my mind that Metroid 6 is almost here, with Sakamoto once again producing after his Famicom Detective break. And I feel confident we'll see this game next year. Samus Returns and Dread had a 4-year gap in between them, which would land Metroid 6 in 2025 if they stayed consistent. But considering Prime 4 will be dropping later this year, and we know Nintendo has a tendency to sit on finished or nearly finished games for timing reasons, I can see Metroid 6 being a really strong second punch in 26. What better way to build momentum for the franchise than to drop 2 brand new, high quality, but completely different experiences a year apart? I'd be shocked if this isn't year 2. Okay, hear me out. Halfway into this research and pattern-based analysis video, I'm pulling out my one vibes-based prediction coupon. It's torn, it's cached, I'm using it. I've got a feeling. Let me just get ahead of the storm here. No, I don't think it's Mother 3. No, I don't think it's Mother 4. But if anything Mother-related has any semblance of a chance this generation, it's an Earthbound remake. I mean, think about it. We're living in one of the most nostalgia-fueled ages in history, a time where seemingly every classic RPG of note is getting a chance to come back around. Nintendo themselves have participated in this with their Super Mario RPG remake. It's not like they're immune to the trend. And their Switch-era success has meant the revival of so many niche IPs. Obviously, the Mother franchise isn't even close to the success of something like Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, or even Mario RPG. But if it were ever to happen across any point in Nintendo's future, this would be the time to do it. Still more likely that it never happens at any point, but hey, hand it off to Art Piazza and let me be right. Please. Please? It's been 14 years since the last Nintendogs game, and I imagine the question right now is if it's still a fad worth pursuing. I mean, people's love for dogs will obviously never die, but the specific touch-centric digital companion type of game is very 2000s and very DS. The original sold 24 million units in 2005, but Nintendogs Plus Cats, which dropped only 6 years later, couldn't manage to hit 5 mil. Still, that's a pretty decent pull from a series that I can't imagine is very expensive to develop, and again, Nintendo's been more than willing to revive dormant franchises that didn't sell tens of millions. There's also that aforementioned nostalgia angle. We live in a time where people will spend money to see a worse How to Train Your Dragon. Of course they'd buy a revival of their favorite childhood pet game. Cats came at a time where the original was fresh on everyone's minds, but 14 years later, those memories are all wrapped up in the warm, cozy embrace of long-lost youth. Also HD rumble petting. I can see this being a pretty simple one for Nintendo, even if it's not a priority. Year 3. He's just itching to do it again, I can feel it. In the years since Pikmin 4's release, something truly incredible has happened to the art of discussing this franchise's future. The despair is gone. After back-to-back decade-long hiatuses between entries, with Miyamoto periodically deciding to be funny in between, it's not surprising that Pikmin fans started getting used to lowering their expectations. But things are finally looking up. Pikmin 4 quickly became the franchise's best-selling title, and was especially popular in Japan. And then things started happening, a phenomenon scientifically known as the Big Five-ification of Pikmin. It's funny because whenever you show this picture to people, they're like, "Where's Pokemon?" And then you have to explain that these are internal franchises that Nintendo has complete ownership of, and they're like, "Oh, where's Kirby?" This image comes from the opening of the Nintendo Tokyo store in 2019, and was quickly linked to other promotional appearances of these 4 franchises to dub them Nintendo's inarguable Big 4. Here's the same picture from Nintendo San Francisco this year. If you can't spot the difference, it's now 20% more adorable. Regardless of whether you think Pikmin deserves this or not, and they deserve everything, Nintendo putting in the effort to promote Pikmin alongside their other titans, even if it hasn't measured up to them yet, is a huge step. Miyamoto isn't the only one who sees their potential anymore. Pikmin 4 was an EPD-10 production, but notably launched the same year as Mario Wonder, another EPD-10 release. This is all thanks to Eighting, the series' new co-developer. Looking at key staff members from 4 makes their contributions evident. Pikmin has a home now, a consistent one, and we'll never have to wait for a decade again. I think. I feel confident that we'll get a Switch 2 edition of Pikmin 4 to hold us over, but once we do, I don't think 5 is too far behind, just like 4 wasn't long after 3 Deluxe. Year 4. Pokemon Legends EA is dropping later this year, and if that's not mainline enough for you, I don't think anyone will refute the arrival of Gen 10 in 2026, right? I don't actually have to research that, do I? It's Pokemon. It'll happen. The longer we go without a new Punch-Out, the harder it feels to imagine its return. That's not just me, is it? I mean, the original is iconic, and we did sell over 1 million, but it's definitely got some roadblocks ahead of it if it wants to come back. The most glaring of which is that Next Level Games has now proven they can sell over 14 million with Luigis Mansion, which Nintendo is absolutely going to prioritize, just like they prioritize Mario Sports with Camelot. ARMS is a supposed obstacle that I see people bring up from time to time. I don't personally believe that one. Like, sure, they're both boxing games in the vaguest sense, but they have completely different gameplay, styles, and priorities. Earlier this year, some anonymous Next Level Games employees denied the rumor that the series was cancelled due to cultural backlash, so that doesn't seem to be like a major issue, even if I'm sure Nintendo would want to navigate that more carefully in modern day. But they also brought up the fact that the franchise would need a new gameplay hook to justify its return, and I can't exactly see that discovery process being at the top of their priority list. When Next Level takes their next break between Luigi's Mansion games, I don't think it'll be for Punch-Out. Sorry Mac, not this gen. Duck this one. Ring Fit is one of the newest franchises in this video, and with 15 million units sold, a sequel is a matter of when, not if. Especially since they get to price it higher because of those peripherals. I'm sure Nintendo's dying to get another ring in your hands. EPD4 is Nintendo's weird development group, and I mean that lovingly. Whenever you see an experiment like Labo happen, you can be sure EPD4 was behind it. With that said, while I'm sure they'll have plenty of surprises for us in the Switch 2 era, there's 2 main priorities I see them having coming off of the Switch, and Ring Fit is one of them. I do think it's the secondary point of focus though, and it's kinda weird to imagine Nintendo selling an add-on like this so early in the generation. Ring Fit dropped in the Switch's 3rd year, and I see the sequel following suit. 10 years after Megamix, Rhythm Heaven fans finally have something to celebrate, with Groove dropping next year. But that brings up an important point of discussion. To this point, we've been assuming that most major Switch 1 releases get corresponding Switch 2 editions at launch, but what happens when the Switch 1 game doesn't have much to gain from the upgrade and is from a niche franchise? Could they keep it as a Switch 1 release, relying on backwards compatibility alone to sell it to new users? As it stands, we only have a sample size of 2, so we can't be completely sure. Even so, I can still see Nintendo wanting to push any new release as part of their main system's lineup, remasters and ports excluded, so Groove could probably squeeze itself in. Are 120 FPS rhythm games a big thing? I don't know, there'd be some incentive, I'm sure. The big one. Contrary to my established alignments, I love Splatoon. Each entry has provided me with so much fun over this past decade, and I can't wait to see where the franchise goes next. But Splatoon is also sitting in a very conflicting position currently. On one hand, 3 was the first trilogy's finale. It closed out the story arc that began in the first game. It brought back every idol for a massive Splatfest extravaganza. The series is poised to really take some big swings next time around and shake things up, which would obviously take time. On the other hand, it's Splatoon. A franchise that can casually break Japan's launch period sales record is not one that you want to sit on for too long. So, what takes priority? The need to innovate or the need to sell, and fast? And what does this mean for Animal Crossing? Forget that last part. And I think the answer is sort of both. I think the idea that Splatoon needs to be on the Switch 2 instantly is a little misguided. Nintendo has a wealth of 10 million plus sellers to spread throughout the generation, but I also don't expect Splatoon to be some second half straggler just because certain fans, myself included, have decided that the series needs to evolve more. This is selling like crazy regardless. And with Nintendo doing a bunch of hiring throughout the Switch era, I wouldn't be shocked if a lot of that intake went towards EPD5 and providing some additional support to their simultaneous juggernauts. With that in mind, I'm going with year 3. 5 years happened once, even if it wasn't the plan. I can see it happening again. Hey guys, it's Future Pro. Guess what? I'm now 2 for 2 in Nintendo announcing pertinent information in the late stages of my videos. So, Splatoon Raiders just got announced, like right now as I'm making this. Obviously looks to be coming soon. That is a Splatoon release. However, it is a spin-off. Obviously, my analysis was primarily based on the main series, as it has been for most of the franchises in this video. It is still funny that it happened, but honestly, I don't see it changing much about what I said. I still believe Splatoon 4 is a few years away. If anything, this could potentially push it to 2028, maybe, depending on how expansive this is, but 2027 still feels right. I don't see anything changing about Animal Crossing, really. If anything, I think this just goes to show that these teams have been expanded even further. I know you already left your does he know comments because of how I was talking about Splatoon to this point. I forgive you. Anyway, back to Pastendo. With how strongly Nintendo was trying to distance themselves from the Wii branding at the beginning of the Switch era, I think they were a little worried to put out a sports-branded game in fear of messing with their new identity. But now that we're thoroughly past anything Wii-related, and Nintendo Switch Sports sold 16 million on Switch, just short of the top 10 bestsellers, I don't think they're waiting for year 6 this time around. EPD4 is probably behind Welcome Tour, but as soon as they wrap that up, which I'm sure didn't take long, I'm betting they went straight to work on Switch Sports 2, or Switch Sports Resort, or whatever they want to call it. I feel like we see this one early, year 2. Anything later would honestly surprise me. Star Fox is currently in the longest hiatus of its existence, skipping the entire Switch generation. After FZero bombed commercially and didn't provide much to write home about critically, the franchise was left aimless, and Nintendo seemingly hasn't found a new aim in about 10 years. But if there's any hope left for the series, it lies in this man. Miyamoto has limited involvement with the gaming side of Nintendo nowadays, generally preferring to make movies and theme parks, which, I gotta say, is a pretty sick retirement plan. But that doesn't mean his impact isn't still felt at the company. He's one of their most senior and most iconic leaders. Pikmin's ability to bounce back from the brink of failure is largely because of his commitment to the franchise. So, is it possible that once Pikmin gets on track, as one might consider it currently, he could shift that energy elsewhere? Takaya Imamura, Star Fox series veteran who was there right alongside Miyamoto when the original was being made, hasn't given up hope. Last year, while discussing dormant Nintendo franchises, he said the following: "This is just my personal feeling, but I think between Star Fox and FZero, Miyamoto has got the strongest feelings for Star Fox. So I think we'll see another game, film, or some kind of new development with the IP at some point, but I don't know when or what." Even though Imamura no longer works at Nintendo, I feel like his insight is incredibly valuable. Star Fox could, in theory, be Miyamoto's next game-related mission. Maybe it already is. Fox did get that sizable square at the Nintendo Museum mural. This is what our analysis has come to. Anyway, Miyamoto evidently still cares about the franchise. He was happily present when Ubisoft pitched Star Fox integration in Starlink. As evidenced by Pikmin, as long as someone with that much pull at the company wants something to happen, I feel like it'll happen. And with Fox taking an entire generation to breathe, I can see it being soon. So, wildcard here, very uncertain year 2. Okay, that coupon's really gone now. There are few Nintendo franchises that have a chokehold on the community as much as Smash. Expect to see it mentioned in every Direct's lead-up until it shows. But funnily enough, similarly to Star Fox, this franchise's immediate future rests on one man's shoulders. Or does it? Here's the thing, Sakurai is directing Kirby Air Riders, which I'm very happy about, by the way, no complaints on my end. Obviously, in spite of his commitment and often frightening level of dedication, this man can't be dual-wielding directorial roles, especially since we know just how hands-on his process is. So the question remains, will Susie Haltman be playable? And secondly, what's up with Smash? Sakurai did say on his YouTube channel that he can't imagine the series without him. Is Nintendo really gonna wait for him to finish Air Riders before proceeding? Definitely not. Smash Ultimate is the third best-selling game on the Switch, and on top of that, the franchise's marketing potential is near unparalleled. Nintendo's able to dominate huge chunks of industry discussion just by revealing a character. No Smash game from Melee onwards has ever released later than 2 years into the life cycle, and it's clear to see why. Smash is an event, one that lasts for years at a time at this point, and the last thing Nintendo wants is to start the party late. So, how do we mesh all these pieces together? Seems simple to me. Sakurai takes a step back. But not like all the way back. Kirby Air Riders is a Bandai Namco production, just like Smash Bros. Their Nintendo-focused studio was hiring for a 2D action game way back in November 2023. So, assuming Air Riders is a lighter production than Smash, which I don't think is an unreasonable assumption to make, what's stopping Sakurai from wearing 2 hats? If he's taken on a lighter role, think producer, supervisor, or just general overseer, he could feasibly accomplish both. It's not unheard of in the industry. Which is not the same as me encouraging it before the Let Sakurai Rest crowd pulls up, I'm just working off his established characteristics. Nintendo's nuzzled Smash into their year 2 holiday slot twice now, and considering that 2023 job listing and Smash Ultimate's 3-year development cycle, 2026 seems just about right to me. There's no chance Tomodachi Life doesn't get a Switch 2 edition next year. Living the Dream has the potential to sell more than 10 million units. Its announcement trailer became the most liked tweet from Nintendo Japan. They'd be silly not to take advantage of the new system's hype, even if it only means the food looks a little better. WarioWare is a fun one. These games don't cost much, don't make much, and keep on rolling. I think Intelligent Systems just really likes making them. But with that said, I wouldn't be surprised if things slow down a little bit. Get It Together hit over 1 million, which is in line with the series' typical performance, but Move It failed to pass the 1 million mark, and that feels like something that could give them some pause, especially on Switch. I don't expect a long break for the series. Again, these games seem really easy to make in the context of IS's typical output, but I don't see 2 years between entries happening again. With that in mind, I'm shooting for a safe year 3. He'll be back when we need him. If I had to choose one developer to make the MVP of the Switch generation, it would be whoever made the Pikmin 4 idle animations, but second would be Monolith Soft. These guys are crazy. Monolith truly made themselves invaluable over the last 8 years. The amount of development support they provide for Nintendo is insane. Breath of the Wild, Splatoon 2, New Horizons, Splatoon 3, Tears of the Kingdom, they've been booked and busy, all while pushing Xenoblade to incredible new heights. 2 new mainline entries, 2 substantial expansions, and 2 high-effort remasters. They don't sleep. Rumors were circulating a while ago that Monolith might be working on a new IP, but evidence towards that seems sort of inconclusive. There's a lot of mixed up, intertwined assessments. It seems like some of the action game hiring they were doing might have been for Tears of the Kingdom. So as much as I'd love, maybe even prefer, to see something completely new from them after the Xenoblade trilogy, they've shown us their priorities. Xenoblade 4 seems like our safest bet for their next release. And considering Xenoblade 3 dropped in 2022, and that game was 5 years after 2, I think we've got a realistic time frame. These are big games. Monolith Soft knows how to take advantage of their hardware, and through whatever development magic happens behind those doors, I think they'll be consistent. Year 3. Yoshi, everyone's favorite franchise. That's a joke, by the way. Sorry, Yoshi fans. I mean, everyone loves this guy to an extent. Yoshi's Island and Woolly World are truly excellent games, and I have a weird nostalgic attachment to Island DS and its weird baby cries. But I don't know, it feels like there's so little excitement around the franchise at this point, you know? I never see anyone saying, hey, I can't wait for that next Yoshi. Which is maybe why it's unsurprising that Goodfield finally decided to do something different with Princess Peach Showtime, branching out into a new part of Mario's world. Speaking of Mario's world though, amazing segue, I think Nintendo's got plenty of motivation to get on that next Yoshi game stat. The new Mario movie sequel, leaked to be titled Super Mario World, or some variation of it, is bound to focus on our second favorite green dinosaur. They'd be leaving money off the table if he doesn't get a game on Switch 2. That doesn't mean it has to be instant though. Goodfield tends to take a while between their Nintendo entries, and it was 5 years from Crafted World to Showtime. Even if they take advantage of some renewed Yoshi marketability, I'm not sure it would be so soon. If they really got working on it though, I could see it dropping a year after the movie, maybe working in tandem with 3D Mario for an extensive franchise push. Year 3. And finally, we've made our way to Zelda. I'm sure some of you are thinking that this should have been at L and are now questioning how I order my games, but be honest here. Did you really want me to end on Yoshi? What can I say, I've got a passion for finales. Let's talk 2D first. After joining the fray in Triforce Heroes, Grezzo has become the new home of 2D Zelda, leading the charge on both the Link's Awakening remake and 2024's Echoes of Wisdom. And while they worked on other projects within that space, like the Miitopia remaster, I can see Zelda being an almost exclusive focus for them going forward. Especially since, as we'll talk about in a second, the next 3D game is likely a ways away. If Nintendo really wants to keep up those yearly Zelda releases, well, they can't all be ports. With Echoes serving as a base for their own original 2D Zelda experience, I can see them cutting down on some of that experimentation phase. 4 years feels reasonable to me. So, I'm going with year 4. 3D Zelda is a whole other beast. Tears of the Kingdom took more than 6 years to develop, and that game was iterating off of Breath of the Wild. Worth noting that, yeah, the world fell apart for a second there during its development, but man, how long is the next completely original game gonna take? Well, we also had 6 years from Skyward Sword to Breath of the Wild, and while development times are inflating in the industry as we move to stronger and stronger hardware, I think this might stay consistent. According to Aonuma, Tears of the Kingdom was essentially finished all the way back in March 2022. That final year was completely dedicated to polishing the experience, which I'm sure was still heavy work considering just how crazy that game's systems are, especially for the Switch, but with the bulk of development done, it's not impossible for them to have gotten a head start on the next 3D Zelda experience, especially since they specifically avoided DLC to get moving on to the next thing. I know I don't have any specific rankings under the second half umbrella, but screw it. Year 5, 2029. Man, I can feel it. And there you have it, all relevant pieces of information on most relevant Nintendo franchises. Even if you disagree with me on certain release timing predictions, I see you 3D Mario fans, hopefully you can at least see where I'm coming from with most of them. The Switch 2 will have all sorts of surprises in store over the next decade, and I can't wait to see when those surprises arrive. The sheer diversity of Nintendo's franchises will always be their biggest strength, and I'm sure the ways in which they leverage that lineup this generation will be truly incredible. Who knows, maybe even, no. Some things are better left forgotten.